All right, Ty, this is a pseudo-emergency. And by pseudo-emergency, I mean it's not an emergency at all. But I guess it's a bonus bit of audio that we're giving to our Patreon subscribers at verballers.com and on YouTube for everybody. Penn State has reportedly made a decision to bring on legitimately very good Iowa State head coach Matt Campbell to assume the position, same position at Penn State, to be their new head football coach. You can take the reins of the opinions and analysis first, but I will just say, objectively, it's been a long process. Penn State has appeared in the news. Pat Kraft, athletic director, has appeared in the news, most recently with leaked audio mapping out his thoughts on Big Ten teams and Penn State's own situation and recruiting strategies. But nevertheless, the news has turned positive for Penn State because they have hired a legitimately very good coach in Matt Campbell away from Iowa State and the Big 12 to the Big 10 to take on Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, blah, 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 blah. What do you think?
You know, we have a thing on this show, and it's more your thing than mine, but we talk about the overthink and the underthink express. When you overthink something, it's hard to switch tracks and start underthinking something, and vice versa. This appears to me, after all of the hullabaloo, after all of the weird steps that got us to this point, it very much seems as though Pat Kraft, the athletic director at Penn State, started out on the Overthink Express, where he tried to go out after the biggest names that would move message boards, conversations across this great land of ours, and Penn State has an expansive alumni base. Mm-hmm. He didn't get any of those guys. No. And I would say embarrassingly so. Most recently with what went on with Kalani Sitake at BYU, how that deal sort of disintegrated. Suddenly the weight of the world seemed to be on Pat Kraft's shoulders. I think we heard a little bit of that in the leaked audio that came out, the alleged leaked audio of his meeting with a group of players before the Rutgers game. But then something happened over the last 24 to 48 hours where Pat Kraft successfully was able to switch tracks altogether. I had seen some reporting, I'd read some columns out there talking about how this gave them an opportunity for a bit of a reset. Granted, you don't want to do a reset on a coaching search 50 some odd days into it. But that, in effect, is what they tried to do. And in doing so, he kind of jumped from overthinking to underthinking the hire. Matt Campbell's been a name that has come up in many a coaching search. I saw that there were a few posts online. Somebody had chronicled all of the different jobs that Matt Campbell had been rumored for, had maybe been offered along the course of his career at Iowa State, and he had taken none of them before this one. So to go out there after all of that, to get Matt Campbell on the flip side of what was a very messy process, is strangely a very big capital dub for Pat Kraft and the Penn State athletic operation. I'm thrilled that it ended up where it did. Matt Campbell may not be the sexiest hire. I think he brings a lot to the table that we could discuss here, but just the fact that they were still able to come out of this in a way that I think they could claim a win is a huge deal. That is a big save for Pat Kraft. That is a big save for Penn State football. And if you're a Penn State football fan, despite all of the noise, it seems as though they got a really good coach. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and shout out to Penn State for making this hire when we're not recording a show that's not in the middle of a Saturday, roster of games or a Sunday recap. It just is really good timing for us and you as a Penn State alum and Penn State fan to sort of sit on the news and figure out how you feel and react pretty quickly thereafter. It seems like a good hire. You're right about Matt Campbell's market over the years. It's unclear how close he came to taking any open job or interviewing for these jobs, because he was pretty clear about how happy he was in Ames, Iowa. There was no shortage of interest in Matt Campbell. He has never been somebody to jump around. He spent total as an assistant and head coach at Toledo, something like 7 years before spending about a decade in Ames, has done a good job at a place that traditionally has struggled to string together quality years. I think he out-recruited what Iowa State basically has ever done in the modern era, which is telling with his ability to connect, with high school coaches, with recruits, with families, whatever. He has an Iowa State alum as a Super Bowl participating quarterback in Brock Purdy, right? Yep. I don't even say that tongue in cheek. Like, the Brock Purdy thing was incredible. He was like late demand as a recruit, when he caught fire his senior year, schools like A&M and Alabama allegedly stuck with Matt Campbell, and Iowa State has had, a lot of NFL guys in, DBs and wide receivers recently. They've won a ton of games. They probably peaked, it seems, because of maybe injury issues these past couple of years, but like 2020, 2021, I think coincidentally, both of their major bowl victories came against Mario Cristobal, right? The Cheez-It Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl. Right. So those were 2 top 15 finishes, which by Iowa State standards may as well be a national championship. So big question for me is, what can Matt Campbell do tomorrow, right? To salvage what Penn State's roster looks like looking forward, to encourage and galvanize money behind the scenes ahead of the portal opening, because this is very much a roster in flux after James Franklin leaving, and this the early signing period leaving Penn State with, was it 4 kids in this class?
Yeah,
something
I
crazy.
Think they finished with 2. Yeah,
2 kids. Excuse me. Sorry, I overestimated by 100%.
Yeah,
and I got it. I mean, just out of curiosity here, like, is he being paid $27 million a season? Like, he is coming into a situation in which he's clearly not top of mind, top of list, unless he turned it down and had a change of heart 3 weeks ago or something that we just, unbeknownst to us.
Well, I mean, the reporting early on was that he wasn't necessarily at the front of the list, at the front of the line. And Penn State shot what Pat Kraft thought was much higher. And we had heard a bunch of names that were linked to the jobs. And if you follow the message boards, as I have, I mean, you still, as of last night, had a percentage of people who thought that they might be able to reel in Marcus Freeman. So like most coaching searches at a big school, there were no shortage of unrealistic expectations floating around out there. The extent to which Pat Kraft internalized some of that and actually tried for it remains to be seen, and we'll never know. But we do know that some of that went on. That's why it took, at least in part, so long to get to this stage now where it seems as if they've got their guy. Obviously, it fell apart with Kalani Sitake, and it was at that point that we saw a bit of a reset here. But, Matt Campbell, excuse me.
There you go. We got Matt and Pat.
Has been rumored to many a job over the years. Penn State does have a relatively recent success story with hiring somebody away from Iowa State, that being the wrestling coach, Cale Sanderson, who has gone on to win, I believe, 12 national championships as a wrestling coach. So at least
a wrestling school.
In terms of that, they have a pretty good track record for bringing guys over from Ames. The question that I have first and foremost is, what does the recruiting operation look like? In the short term, as you alluded, because it was not a good class given circumstances, but how many of his guys from Iowa State will want to come with? How many guys can he go out there and attract via the transfer portal? And ultimately, what is the pitch? How does the pitch differ from what James Franklin was selling, which, by the way, appears to be selling James Franklin? Because a lot of those guys followed him to Blacksburg and are going to be playing for Virginia Tech next year. So this gives Penn State, I think, as a football program, an opportunity to hit the reset button and maybe evaluate the pitch. How exactly are they selling this institution?
Which was part of the leaked audio, right? Which was part of the Pat Kraft leaked audio.
Exactly. And that's where I was going to go next. I mean, Pat Kraft brought this up. If you believe that the audio is real, it sounds a lot like Pat Kraft.
It does sound like Pat Kraft.
Sounds exactly like Pat Kraft, but one of the items that came up was, hey, this is in the middle of nowhere. And hey, this works against us. And so how Matt Campbell, given his experience in coaching at places like Toledo and coaching at places like Ames, Iowa, how he can maybe use some of his experience to turn that negative into more of a positive, I think time will tell. But this gives them an opportunity to reset on that front, how they're selling Penn State. I also think it gives them an opportunity to reset how they structure their roster management operations. One of the other items that did come up in that leaked audio was that James Franklin, and the way that they had allotted funds, he was basically paying everybody on the roster. A guy like a Liam Clifford, who didn't get a whole lot of action, was getting paid $500,000. If you believe that, that's a lot of money for only a handful of catches throughout the course of the year. So is there a better way to allot those funds to make sure
that'll come down to the GM hire. That'll come down to
exactly
the way, the business of the roster is structured.
A lot that remains to be seen, but I think this gives them an opportunity to sort of break from whatever the model was in the past and move towards something that is built in a much different image. So I'm excited about that. Look, Matt Campbell did a wonderful job at Iowa State. He definitely was punching above his weight class at Iowa State. I think he had all but 2 losing records in his entire time in Ames. So he was very much a winning coach and did a really good job, played most recently in the Big 12 championship game just a year ago. So I think he has certainly done more with less. He has proven that much in his time as a head coach. What does the recruiting operation then look like moving forward, not just in the short term? Because the big question that I immediately had was, well, granted, he's done more with less in his time at Iowa State. What can he do as a recruiter now if he is given the keys to a much larger operation with a bigger war chest? Will the recruiting follow suit? Or is this still going to be something that's going to need some work? Only time will tell on that front.
It's a different footprint, obviously, given Matt Campbell's history in state of Iowa, state of Ohio, the way he recruited the Midwest, the way he recruited really like not everywhere, but like I want to say Brock Purdy's from Arizona, right? That they cast a pretty wide net in the vague Big 12 region. And look, he doesn't have to copy what James Franklin did in terms of what Penn State's recruiting footprint has been in Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Virginia, whatever. But those are the relationships. There are schools there that have been, known as traditional feeders or known as traditionally friendly to Penn State type schools and areas. But Matt Campbell, I think, if you are to believe what's been written, our friend Max Olson wrote a piece, I think, for ESPN years ago about 5-star culture at Iowa State. And if you're also reading what Penn State has been like, reportedly behind the scenes, extremely tight, extremely on edge, right? Especially this season with the expectation. So if Matt Campbell is the type of person to make people feel comfortable, make players want to give everything they have for Penn State and feel appreciated for giving everything that they have, that seems like a move in the correct direction. I'm not worried about like what Pat Kraft is worried about. That's just a marketing thing. That's just a sales thing. Good recruiters can sell ice to an Eskimo, right? That you say, yes, there's not a ton around State College, but that actually makes it better to have fewer distractions so that you can go to school, you can get an education, you can, perfect your craft playing linebacker, playing safety, playing tight end, playing whatever. Like, we're here to focus. We're here to help you grow as a student, as a person, as a football player. The right coaches will be able to send that message very clearly to recruits. And I think Matt Campbell, who he hires, how he positions Penn State in the recruiting world, in the portal world, I'm not terribly worried about. He's a good coach. He's, you win, as you said, like punch higher than your weight, whatever, for a reason. He resonates with people. He resonated with the Iowa State community. He'll resonate with the Penn State community. I think he's a good communicator. I have no doubt that he will give everything he has in the right way. The question, and you can speak to this still, is what does that get you above 10-2?
Well, and that's, I think, going to be the operative question. Now, I don't know if they're going to go much above 10-2 next year because they're
but that's that's why you made this move.
Starting from a trailing position at this point, to say the least. But I think what Penn State gets in Matt Campbell is a guy who's really bright schematically. His teams were very well coached in terms of being in the right place at the right time, presenting a very difficult matchup for opponents. It's one of the things that, we've talked about a lot over the years. He's very good at that side of it. And I think he has shown a really strong aptitude for developing players, getting the most out of his players. Again, the more with less thing is never more true when you're coaching at a place like Ames, Iowa. No disrespect. It is not Penn State. It is not a blue blood program. It was always going to be, from, again, a trailing position. So this is something that he's somewhat familiar with, especially given where he's going to be starting out at Penn State. And I have a lot of faith in the fact that he can pull through it rather quickly. His teams are tough. His teams have always had, I think, an edge over competition. They always seem to play a really physical brand of football, and that type of thing will play really well in State College. So, we'll see what he does on that front. I am curious about the assistant pool and what that's going to look like. Obviously, there are some guys, I'm looking at you, Jim Knowles, who are getting paid a lot still by the university, who, if things work out, he might be retained. I don't know what the status of that is going to be.
At this point, Matt Campbell's getting anything he wants.
Anything
at this
he wants
stage in the process.
At this point. So I'm really optimistic that putting a staff together won't be much of an issue. The biggest question right now at time of recording is going to be the recruiting operation. How quickly can he boot this thing up? How much like sway will he have in the portal, given the fact that there's probably going to be playing time that he can go out there and pitch to some of these recruits. Yeah. It's going to be one of those deals where he needs to hit the ground running in a very big way if they want to be competitive next year. But what does work to his advantage, A, he knows how to coach. He knows how to scheme up X's and O's. B, I think the style of football is a pretty natural fit for State College. And C, the schedule in 2026 is very advantageous.
I just pulled it up.
This is a schedule that works very much to his advantage. There's a little bit of a runway to get started, to get things figured out. And I'm pretty optimistic that at worst, again, we're looking at a bowl team. You know, I think anything worse than that would be considered a pretty big failure in year one, even given what they've got going on with this roster and the recruiting operation.
No Oregon, no Ohio State, no Indiana.
Right.
Which is weird that we're listing Indiana, but of course we should be listing that given recent results, and they're playing, as we're recording this, the day before the Big Ten Championship game. They will be in my backyard, by the way, if you want to come through. Watch Matt Campbell's Penn State Nittany Lions in Evanston at the newly built, from the studs, Ryan Field. So they'll be here, but yes, and that's weirdly a revenge spot for Penn State next season.
It is. And the other thing that I would add, kind of on the heels of this leaked audio coming out.
Yeah.
There was a pretty strong push internally to retain Terry Smith. The players were all about Terry Smith. There's a certain segment of the donor class that was all about Terry Smith. And we saw this sort of locking of horns taking place. I very much think that Pat Kraft was on a timer. He had to get it done relatively quickly. Otherwise, that donor class was going to eat him alive. Right. And so he definitely felt the weight of this decision. He definitely felt the need to act quickly to get a guy in place to avoid going in that direction. And, I have a lot of respect for Terry Smith. I don't think you make the move to get rid of James Franklin with the sole intention of promoting Terry Smith. If he would have done that, to your point from earlier, it probably means that Pat Kraft is fired. So he definitely understood the assignment here in the 11th hour that he had to move quickly to try and get a guy in place. I think the style and I think the demeanor of Matt Campbell, given the fact that there was sort of this internal strife, Matt Campbell will go a long ways towards assuaging everyone's feelings, making everyone feel like they got a good guy, a humble guy who very much is on brand with what Penn State has represented over all of these years. And provided he can go out there and get the most out of his talent, I think people will feel very good about it. One obvious way that I think he can do that, just look at his track record with receivers as of late.
Yeah, that's true.
Out at Iowa State.
Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins, yeah.
That is a very recent example, and they have typically been fairly strong in that capacity, be it either out wide or with some of the tight ends that have come through that program. As you said, quarterbacks, they've got a good one right now in Rocco Becht, who has done a pretty good job. What do you call him? Chaz Kohler? Chaz Kohler. We've had, I think, a fair number of guys come through that program that have done well and have been legitimate pro prospects. That is certainly a flashpoint within the Penn State community, their inability to turn those guys, in some cases, high-level recruits out wide, into serviceable, productive players that can aid the offense. There has been some kind of mismatch there, either with the guys they're bringing in and the system they're trying to run, or just bad scouting of those players. I don't know what that is, but that I see as an option for Matt Campbell, where he can come in, he can make an immediate impact. People will notice a big difference from what they've seen over the last couple years out wide, and fans are going to very easily be able to point to this system and say, okay, now this at least feels like it's a more modern offense. This at least feels like it's going in a better direction. Not to say it's going to be the best offense in the Big Ten. Don't even know who's going to be playing quarterback next year, but that is definitely something where Matt Campbell has proven an aptitude for developing talent and putting it out there on the field and getting the most out of those guys.
Yeah, former offensive line coach, which I always kind of like, right? If your base is going to be like, we have two offensive line coaches in your head coach, and like, it doesn't mean you're going to have an 11-1 season every year, but like, I don't know. I think you can have a really nice starting point in that regard. Look, the first thing he's going to do after he curves his assortment of like size whatever hats, because he's going to have the most curved bill in the Big Ten for the foreseeable future.
Unlike any hat brim I've ever seen in my life, but that's a separate conversation.
It's exactly right. Look, he's going to start calling the best 2027 prospects in the Keystone State of Pennsylvania, right? He's going to hit the ground running. Pennsylvania is always a state that, has a pretty rich high school football tradition, especially, I think there's a 5-star offensive lineman who is the top of 2027, a 5-star running back.
Yep.
Obviously Notre Dame has produced a good amount of inroads in the state, but including you, right? They recruited you from an early age.
Sure.
He's going to hit the ground running, and I think it's a good thing. They're going to have to hit the portal hard, and you're right about the quarterback thing. By and large, recently, they've gotten good quarterback play at Iowa State, Rocco Becht and Brock Purdy. There have been down years in situations. The Hunter Deckers year wasn't incredible. Joel Lanning, all due respect to all these guys, but I think he's going to find guys. I think
he's
you're
going
right
to find
about the
guys.
receiver thing.
I'm optimistic that over the long haul, he will find a way to put a professional operation in place. And this is not to take away from anything James Franklin did. I think James Franklin was excellent. He did an excellent job building up that program, but this will be a different approach. And it's not to say it won't or will work, but I do think it was time to try something different. And this definitely gives them an opportunity to refresh at a minimum.
Yeah. I think you're going to have and I can't speak to this culture at all. You're obviously going to have the Joe Pa loyalists who look at Terry Smith and say he's one of ours. And obviously Terry Smith played for Penn State a long time ago. There's going to be that faction of people. Matt Campbell, I think, checks a ton of boxes, right? That he's been a successful head coach. I think he was a 3-time Big 12 coach of the year. He has this head coaching experience. This is not a job that can be looked at as too big for him. He's been a Power 4 head coach. There are certain idiosyncrasies to being the Penn State head coach, just like there are for every school, that Matt Campbell is going to, there will be a learning curve there to sort of understand that culture. But I think they crushed it. I have no idea how it's going to work out, but when we're talking about how there were rumors of Kalen DeBoer and Kalani Sitake, more than rumors, obviously, and Matt Rule and all these names that had come up immediately with Pat Kraft, to end up with a legitimately very good coach who hasn't really given many places the time of day, giving Penn State the time of day. Penn State's a huge place with a huge ceiling. I don't know what it is right now in a really tough Big Ten, but I think he's somebody who can succeed in State College for sure.
Why don't we leave it there, Dan? Let us know down in the comments what your thoughts are on Matt Campbell, seemingly the new head football coach at Penn State.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll sign that paperwork, Dan. That'd be nice to get someone signing the paperwork so we put all this whole thing to bed. Yeah.
Yeah, would be nice. So, yeah, can't wait to watch.